Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the event objectives for the Gems of War Lettuce Prey event, in which we get two very interesting, very good troops, pretty much the two best that have been added this year. They also both have the new Blessed mechanic, so I'll be able to go over that, as well as a bunch of various teams. There's probably plenty more teams as well to be going over with these. It's going to take a lot more testing to really figure it out, but they could potentially be pretty close to new meta just because they're both relatively high up there as far as how useful they are. So let's get over to all of that. As far as the rabbit itself, it does have a really good arcane trait stone as well, and you can get two, which is the cheapest you could ever get it for since it's epic, 200 each, 200 glory each specifically for each epic. And you definitely want to stock up on this, particularly if you're a newer player, as every single green, purple, and power troop in the game is useful, and green, purple has the most amount of empower troops of any other color, so definitely really good to get that. Otherwise, you'd put it on things like Kraken. Anyways, as far as this rabbit itself, not as good as the other troop that came out, but still amazingly strong. It's very similar to that of a Mercy, except slightly different. It converts all blue to yellow, so it does convert to yellow immediately. It does have Empowered, which is the most relevant thing. It gets to do this from turn 1. It then gives a bunch of life to all other allies. This is more overall life than a Mercy, but it will be less single target life than that of a Mercy. Also, Mercy automatically hits whatever the weakest is, so if she's the weakest, it would hit herself, whereas this thing can never hit itself, so people could just target it down and kill it, whereas a Mercy would be able to heal from that. But the other interesting thing is it automatically blesses the first ally. So Blessed is a mechanic that we've kind of had for 2 versions now, for like, what, 2-3 months? But we've never had anything that has a 100% chance of doing it until today. So basically what it does is it acts very similar to that of Impervious. It gives immune to all stats effects, gives immune to Devour, and it gives immune to Mana Burn. However, there is one difference between Blessed than that of a actual Impervious, and that is that it also has the additional immunity to that of Mana Drain, which is something that Impervious naturally doesn't have. So even if you put this on something like something that has Impervious, even though it gives most of the same benefits, it would still technically give it the addition of a immune to Mana Drain. Additionally, anything that initially gets blessed will be cleansed of any negative stats effects that it has. So if they're currently death marked, poisoned, and all that, whatever might be on it, as soon as it gets blessed, all of those will be removed from it. So it acts basically as a cleanse when it is initially placed onto a troop as well. So it could potentially be very effective, since you could theoretically give your entire team Bless. However, whenever the troop takes a skull, or whenever the troop casts, it will lose its Bless. So do be mindful of that. But otherwise, it is a pretty strong stats effect. Other than that, it can also be overwritten with Cursed, though inversely, Cursed can be overwritten with Blessed. But there's no current way to really put Cursed yet, but I'm pretty sure we'll be getting some kind of option in the very near future. Other than that, its other relevant part is that it has 25% spell reduction. It's not like a Mercy, as I mentioned, it can't heal itself. However, it does have some additional reduction compared to that of a Mercy. So there are instances where you would use this other than a Mercy. It really just depends which specific one you need for your team in a given moment at a time. It basically depends on, do you not need purple, or do you not need blue for the most part? Or do you need to HP buff something specifically, because this can be used with Yagway and other things that are HP dependent, since you'll be able to give it to everything instead of whatever's the weakest, unlike Mercy that will probably never target them. Anyways, definitely a really good thing to go and get. Make sure to do so. As far as the event objective related stuff, we have ourselves 10% to all beasts as well as 10% to all mystics. If you use this thing in PvP, the Moon Rabbit, you will be getting 2 times the trait zones. So highly advised, since most of the teams that you could be able to build with it are going to be pretty quick anyways, since you're just empowering the blue to yellow immediately to fill up a bunch of yellow damage sources. So it works out pretty well. And other than that, all you have to do is kill a bunch of brown in PvP or Explore. You can do KZO pretty easily, that one Dwarf Kingdom all the way at the top if you want to do Explore, or simply just go find people that have bomb bots or some kind of other really easy brown team set up for the week, or just do PvP in general. As far as event keys, they are insanely good. We have a new legend that came in. Other than that, the mythic that was most recently added is actually in the drop table as well. At least as a chance. So if you didn't end up getting that the other week, he is available now. This is actually the quickest that a mythic ever went from being exclusive and then instantly being pretty much exclusive again. It had almost no downtime whatsoever. But yeah, if you didn't get the most recent mythic that was added, he's already available again since this is Shantang. Other than that, one other pretty nice drop that you can get here is Yagway. If you didn't get him from last week from Diamonds, if you still need him, highly advise getting him. He's used for a lot of stuff and great for PvP. But anyways, the more relevant thing is the Quillen that ended up coming in today. This is a new troop, and it is very, very good. Every single aspect about it is pretty nice. It's a Divine Beast, however, it does look more like a Divine Dragon, which it would have been a Divine Dragon. But Divine Beast, it converts all purple gems to red, which is good, and all brown gems to skull, which is decent. And then it blesses 2 random allies. So, of course, that's the bless that ends up giving all the impervious and everything like that. The main thing that makes this thing noteworthy is it is insanely good synergy with Divine Ishbala. Pretty much this plus Divine Ishbala with 2 other things is one of the more solid skull spam teams in the game. It has a really good loop. If you have Divine Protector, it just feeds perfectly into both of them. And yeah, it is really, really amazing synergy. Other than that, it is the first troop to have a storm at the start of battle. Of course, this mechanic is still available, but it, to my understanding, I don't think a single other troop until now has gotten it. Hero has it. Almost every single hero class has this capability, doing a storm at the start of battle. However, this should be the first troop that has ever gotten this mechanic. So now we have a light storm that we can start at any time, and we don't need to use some kind of hero like priest. We still could, but to synergize with it, but we don't specifically have to use the light storm off of it. We could simply just go use something like this troop. And similarly, any team that ever needs a light storm at the start of battle at a high dependency, we can simply just go put this onto our team, and boom, we have a light storm at the start of battle for 4 turns, or 8 total, for since it just keeps going back and forth. Other than that, one other pretty noteworthy thing about this is it does gain 1 magic on all 4 times and 5 times matches to every single ally. That is pretty decent, since that's 4 magic every single extra turn, and this can be spammed very easily, and this isn't restricted to any kind of type like Divine or Beast or anything else. So you can use this with absolutely anything and still get the full effect, unlike something like a Hindla Frost Crown, who can only end up doing it to giants. This can do it to absolutely anything, so it's going to be pretty decent. And it also has a little bit extra stats off of its revered. But yeah, definitely great week to go and open up event keys. I would highly advise making sure you get at least 1 copy of him and 1 copy of Yagway before the end of the week if you still have some spare keys laying around. Great week to go and open them. Of course, we have Guild Wars this week. As far as the other event-related stuff, Tuesday we're going to be having Crypt, which is also one of the easier ones to do faction on. Pure faction, as well as just getting higher faction in general. Wednesday, we don't really have anything too interesting. We just have the cosmetic pet of the Valentine's Day pet. Not that. It's currently showing my previous pet. But we're going to be getting like some kind of Valentine's thing. It's fully cosmetic though, so nothing too interesting there. Thursday, we have a Frost Mage. Frost Mage is a okay hero class. Not the best, not the worst. Probably above average. It does have half mana start. It does have that explosion. It does have a freeze at the start of battle. It's actually one of the best, or the best, freeze option as far as hero classes are concerned, at least currently. So it's an okay hero class to have around. It doesn't really gain much of a benefit beyond 70 though. And other than that, this Soulforge, we have several things that are actually pretty good in it this week. The most noteworthy one has to definitely be Infernus. Infernus is generally the first thing that you tend to craft. It's basically the best well-rounded first craft in the entire game as far as mythics are concerned. It does basically everything that you would really need from a first mythic. It has really high damage output that can't really be countered. Submerge doesn't block it. Barrier only partially blocks it because it hits a single target and then does half to adjacent, so ends up racking up quite a bit of damage. It can still concentrate damage when there's only 1 left, other than like how AoEs work, where they just keep doing the same amount constantly, whereas this technically does more to single targets once there's less on the team. It does the 5 explodes, which is pretty irrelevant because it's still one of the only viable options, if not the only viable option, that has its own storm into its own explosion. This is really relevant mainly because you can use this with the cascades in order to have a higher chance of extra turning. Not only that, but that red storm does go right back into his own color, so it ends up working out pretty well. He does the 5 explosions, he already has the kill, then there's more reds that come down, he gets an extra turn off it, at least more consistently, and you basically can somewhat infinitely loop him. Not exactly infinite loop, but you get a lot more value out of it. Even if you don't get a loop, even though he has a 24 mana cost, you get a lot of that mana back every single time you end up casting his ability. And he is divine, so you can use that with stuff like Divine Ishbala as well. He's also pretty noteworthily used with Elma Grimm, particularly on red and particularly more so on purple Guild War days. And other than that, it also has the best burn option in the game. Even if this was the only thing it did, it'd probably still be good. Assuming they assuming they don't have immune to burning, that's essentially 3 damage to all enemies per turn for the entire battle. which is really good. And things that are dependent on burn for boost ratios or any kind of mechanic tend to always run an Infernus on the team, just because he is the best burning option in the game by far, and probably always will be, given that all he has to do is take one single extra turn to burn the entire enemy team, meaning it's 0 downtime, and you can just keep spamming it over and over again very easily to keep refreshing it infinitely. Other than that, Elamagrim is a pretty decent pickup. Definitely not one of the first things I would get, probably more like 6th or 7th mythic or so, but it's pretty relevant this week as it is Guild Wars, and this is pretty standard for purple Guild Wars. This plus Infernus with anything up front to feed it reds or any mana in general tends to be pretty solid teams. Ends up dealing damage to all enemies, ends up creating 8 purples, and that's boosted per burning, meaning that if the enemy has 4 burns, that'll be 12 purples per cast. It's also one of the best impervious troops in the game, given how much damage it can do, and it also ends up having a attack reduction that can be spammed and makes it really good against pretty much anything that is skull dependent, particularly various skull spam teams that do not have a attack buff. But overall, really nice troop, definitely great to run on purple Guild War days. You can technically get away with it on red, but it is better on purple. Other than that, Queen Titania is a pretty big pickup. She has one of the highest damage outputs in the entire game. Her ability is already pretty above average because it boost ratios on every single red, not just your allies, but also your enemies. It has a capability of extra turning, so it can just infinitely loop. Other than that, it also has a 0-turn Fairy Fire, so every single time you just take an extra turn, you'll be able to keep doing Fairy Fires onto the enemy team. And this essentially just boosts your overall damage output when you're doing spell casting, since that's 50% additional damage. And similarly, if they can be burned, similar to that of Infernus, if they can be burned, you'll be able to rack up a lot of damage, since that's 50% extra. That brings her ability easily into the 40s range or so, possibly even higher due to the boost ratio and everything. But yeah, she could do some really substantial damage just on her own, and keep in mind that this 50% extra damage does apply to everything. She's most commonly used with Yagwe, though you could use it with literally anything that has very high magical or spell-based damage output. But really nice pickup to have if you still need her. Definitely not dependent, but definitely very useful to have fully traded though. And other than that, that's pretty much all the pickups. A few of them could also somewhat be good for Guild Wars, like for example, Skady and possibly Champion Manu, or like blue Guild War related stuff. But mainly those three are the ones all right next to each other, are the more relevant related ones. But anyways, that's everything with that. Let's go and do some PvP now. I actually have several teams I wanted to show. There's probably going to be plenty more things to go and show into the future. These are just the first things of my initial impressions as far as using it earlier this morning when I was messing around with it before I got around to recording this. But yeah, so these teams. First thing to note here is we have 2 mechanics here that unfortunately Blessed does not protect against, and that is Transform and Instant Kill. These 2 mechanics, unfortunately, Blessed will do nothing against. There is currently, other than the Dooms, there is nothing player-owned that has immune to Transform nor Instant Kill, and unfortunately, Blessed does not have that either. So those 2 mechanics can actually hard counter us. I'm going to do this just because why not? But there is a possibility we get completely decimated here. It really depends if he gets lucky or not. But we'll do the battle again if that does indeed happen. So right off the bat, we're going to want to try getting Divine Protector. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, that's that's how that normally goes. Oh, I hate Gimlet into Dragon's Eye. I normally just skip them. Thought we could get away with it. Not today. Anyways, let's try that again. Round 2. So, where were we? Oh, should have countered that. Oh, what, we gonna do this 2 times in a row? All the really good empowered options. No, we should be fine here. So he gets Cleanse. I'm actually using Priest right now, which has a lot of relevant things. One is he cleanses every single time he extra turn, so that was nice. The other pretty noteworthy thing, he keeps gaining 2 life to all allies every extra turn. This entire team is Divine, so we're gaining 2 life to every single Divine every single turn. And he has a +2 yellow option, which is really weird for a troop, or even for a hero, but yeah, he does technically have +2 to yellow, which is very beneficial. So right here, I believe we have everything we need to auto-win. So yeah, we should be good to go from here. We'll just take that, double-check all of our alignments. We are entangled on a few things, but as long as we're not entangled on first, and he does have Cleanse, so basically he can't be entangled unless he gets stunned. But we have these 2 things. So this does purple to red and brown to skull, and this does red to skull and green to yellow. So obviously, this creates the red, or this gets skull spam, creates the red, it gets our extra turn. Then this uses those reds, converts into skull, and then we just cast Divine Protector or Diviner, and yeah, we basically just auto-win the battle. It is pretty insane how much damage and loop this thing can actually get. it is very, very, very strong. So we'll take this over, double check if we actually have anything. If we don't, we could use any of our other 2 options to try setting up the board. So we don't actually use blue with this, so we'll get rid of all that. Should be able to have another one of these, then we just do that, pass it right into the other one. And it has a little bit of a Forest Guardian Divine Ishbala feel, except it's even better, which is quite insane. But yeah, we'll throw that down, get that on all those. Hopefully we'll have our brown alignment. If not, we have plenty more moves to go do on this board. Definitely not a lack of moves, that's for sure. We have our alignment again on that. That will create a little bit more red, so we can just go right back into Divine Ishbala again. And he pretty much just auto-win the battle. Divine Protector technically isn't required. I don't believe we even casted that a single time. It is pretty useful though, since it creates red and yellow. Though alternatively, you could use pretty much anything there, as long as it ends up fitting, which really, as long as it uses blue, you'd probably be fine. You technically don't even need to use blue, and you could use a minus blue banner if you really wanted to. Divine Protector does work best, but something like a Mountain Crusher would still be perfectly fine, and many other options. I believe I even had a few that specifically go over alternative options. Yeah, here's one. Here's one immediately that goes over one alternative option. So this one, oddly enough, actually uses Dragon Guard instead. You can use this with any triple damage burning one. You have to have them to level 100, so whatever one you happen to have. This one I'm specifically using because it has even more damage than some of the others, because it has 20% extra damage based on its armor. It also gets to start with a barrier, which is kind of nice. But, so that's going to be racking up just a little bit extra. But the main thing about this, and anything that you would use this team with, is it needs to have triple skull damage to burning enemies. So basically what we're going to do here is we have Infernus. This immediately burns everything. Then we're going to go and just keep spamming Mountain Crusher, and we'll be able to keep getting the same loop that we got before, except we're going to have triple the skull damage. One noteworthy thing about Mountain Crusher 2, which is a pretty small detail, but still very relevant for this particular team, is Mountain Crusher is tied at the highest attack bonus that you get from any hero weapon, which is +7. So this makes his attack quite a bit higher. You might have noticed in the previous battle we were sitting at like, what, the high 30s, but now we're in the mid 40s for our attack damage, and this is because this weapon has a really high base attack. So move that. We got even more because of perks as well that we have on the hero itself. So what kind of alignment do we have? Let's see. Can I even remember what he does? It's purple to red and brown to skulls. Unfortunately, that's not currently available. That is still not available. That's very unfortunate. It looks like we're just going to have to keep taking a few moves until something kind of comes into play. I'm going to let it have a skull there. We don't have any way to getting skulls back, but I was hoping we could kind of get into a loop after that. Apparently not. Is it worth really casting? I don't think so. I think we still just go and take another mana again and just hope we have like Divine Ishbala. Should be able to get something out of it. So move that over. He'll do something. And we should be able to get it rolling now. How do we still have nothing? Let's see. Still looks like we have nothing. Oh, let me take that blue first. Could hopefully give us something. And the answer looks like it's still no. We could just use Infernus, clear out the board. Looks like we're going to have to, unless I'm missing something here. But it does look like we do not have an extra turn alignment. So we'll just use that as board clear. Works as a pretty good option for that. We still have a yellow storm, even though he doesn't create a red storm until he gets a kill. So that still helps us be able to get our alignment that we need for our 2 troops that are really heavily yellow dependent. And there is no way we still don't have alignment. Apparently we don't. Okay. Well then. Well, I don't have a board clear option. I guess we'll just take that skull for now. As you can see, we do triple damage because he is currently burned. So very easy kill on that. We haven't really gotten to use the Bless mechanic much yet. It's mainly because we're not really fighting too many things that have status effects at the moment, apparently. Okay. So this is still not worth using. Wow, okay. Let's see. I'm going to move that for now. And that still does not give us anything. That awkward moment when you have 2 double converts and you can't get any alignment. It happens sometimes, but we'll go and explode everything. Another board clear. Hopefully that will give us something. We have so many storms too, all of which are useful. Red Storm will give us better alignment for both of them. Brown Storm will give us better alignment for both of them. And while Yellow Storm doesn't technically give us better alignment, it helps us get that initial mana. And it only goes at the start of battle. So all the storms kind of work out perfectly for the synergy that we need. What doesn't work out perfectly is this board. Okay, you know what? I'm just doing it already. There. Doesn't matter if he hits us a few times. That'll give us what we need, hopefully, off of Divine Ishbala now. And somehow it still doesn't. Okay, you know what? We're still casting it. It's enough to kill. Here we go. Wow, that took really bad luck, but it happens sometimes. It happens. Anyways, on to, oh no, not another Dragon's Eye. Anyways, on to the next one. So, Frost Mage class this Thursday. We do have a Frost Mage event, as I mentioned. There isn't too much to use for it. Dawnbringer into triple Freya, Dawnbringer into double Freya Snow Guardian, Dawnbringer into double Freya Skady, any AoE weapon into triple Freya or double Freya Frost Guardian, stuff like that is pretty much what you'll use, or just standard Mang up front with as Titan with literally anything behind it. There's not too many good options, unfortunately, but if you have all this, to my understanding, is the strongest possible option you can use. Dawnbringer as any hero class you want to level, double Freya Skady is the strongest possible thing that you could use for it. Don't bother getting a Skady just to run that, though. Skady's a pretty bad troop for the most part. Used for very, very few things, but one of those few things is technically Frost Mage class event. Anyways, let's go over the Moon Rabbit now. So here is, let me actually go over the other one, but here is actually a cheap team that you can run with it. I'm not actually going to use it because a lot of the stuff later in the game, it probably won't work as well against because I was messing around with it some, and it was just kind of average. But for earlier on in the game, it should be okay. You get a gigantic, well, not gigantic, but a decent amount of HP buff for both your two allies every single time you cast this. This will end up feeding them a bunch of yellow. These troops end up boost ratioing based on life. You can do this with very similar other concept with like Yagway and anything else that might end up having a really high dependency on HP. But as far as cheap things that have a dependency on HP, Boltorus is basically as cheap as you can possibly get. It still has a decent kill option based on having high HP. Then you just put a really easy to obtain Mountain Crusher Titan in first slot, and you're pretty much good to go. Anyways, let me go over the 2x straight stun one, that's something more towards what I would probably be using. This actually does not use any mythics as well, so more of a mid-range team if you want to use it. It is a Wrath hero using Jar of Eyes, the Moon Rabbit, and of course the new legend that ended up coming out. So we'll be able to use this to essentially get a lot of explosions. Gonna get that immediate convert if we have it. Of course, as luck is gonna be to us today, we do not have any alignment whatsoever. That's kind of to be expected after our streak so far right now. So we have blue to brown, and we also have yellow to skull, but I don't think we want to go for that yet. We want to get the initial convert and then go into his ability. So we'll do that first, and then go and have a lot more skulls that we'd be able to utilize. And right here, we could also try using this. We have purple to red, and we have brown to skulls, neither of which seem to have their alignment at the moment. So I'm just going to go for mana and probably just clear out the board and just go from there. Let's see. Is this going to be another one of those instances where we just never have alignment? Apparently. So let's see. I'll move that over. Should be able to get something soon. The problem is, we're just all the skulls. Neither of us have anything that end up removing skulls. So we can now go to this with these brown skulls, go right into the other one, which we'd hopefully have, and we do. And we basically just keep doing somewhat similarly to what we did before, where we just kind of keep looping it back and forth if we can actually get it. Throw explosions when we can. If he dies, we have a summon to immediately replace it, and just go from there. So I'm going to take a yellow here. We could take the brown and try for an extra turn, but I want them both to have full mana, so we'll do that instead, just so we have two different options in case one of them doesn't have alignment. So we'll just go right into that. That'll hopefully give us our alignment for the other, and it does. And essentially, we have the exact same premise that we kind of had set up before, just ever so slightly different. And whenever we have alignment, we just cast that. Whenever we have, or whenever we need to cast Jar of Eyes, we can do that. And if our first slot ever dies because he's rather flimsy, we can simply just go and resummon him off of the, or not him specifically, but resummon a troop there off of Jar of Eyes, and basically have a somewhat tanky team to go and use. And of course, all of these teams will be gaining that 2 times trait stun every single time. And still, we did not really have a battle to show it off too much, but we do have these blessed traits, which are giving us immunity to basically every status effect in the game, as well as Devour, Mana Burn, and Mana Drain additionally. So we do have these immunities for whenever we do go up against teams that are really dependent on them. It's just most PvP teams don't really use them, maybe like an Infernus here and there for a few burns, stuff like that. But it's still really good if you are up against stuff that are going to be spamming you with various stats effects. And I believe this was just a Tiny team I had set up from earlier. I'm not going to bother doing this. I showed this last week. But this was this one team I was messing around with. But he is available in the event he dropped Tiba right now, if you didn't get him. He's mostly useful, I would say, against Lust teams in PvP and anything that's really heavily trait-dependent in PvP. But other than that, it's not really useful for much, I wouldn't say. It's pretty underwhelming, but if you specifically need a stun that has a high damage output, he would be your option that you'd want to use. But anyways, that's everything that ends up coming in today. We'll be messing around with this more later tonight on tonight's stream, as well as just throughout the week. It seems like the new legend in particular could potentially be really, really strong in the current meta of the game. The Rabbit's probably going to be decent as well, but I personally feel like I'll be using Mercy a little bit more often just because of the consistency of auto-healing the weakest, as well as the cleanse that it has to everything, which is very, very strong, even more so than that of a single Blessed. But definitely the Legend, I feel like, will have a lot of potential, obviously with Divine Ishbala in particular. One of the best synergies it's probably going to have, simply because they both work and function very well together, and you can build a lot of various 4 times or 3 times Divine teams out of them. But anyways, guys, if you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for watching. Best of luck if you're going to be opening any keys, and have a wonderful week. Oh, also, one other thing that I forgot to mention. This Friday, I knew I forgot one thing. We have a Vault event, so if you need to go and get a Cetric Sparkle Sack, or you just need to get more Vault keys in general, or just want to go farm, if you're available next weekend from Friday reset all the way until the Monday reset, all of next weekend, those 3 days, it is a really good time to be doing literally anything in this game pretty much, as you'll be able to farm a bunch of Vault keys, and Vault keys have very good loot in them, like orbs, Cetric Sparkle Sack, gems, keys, and various other valuables in them. But anyways, guys, I'll wrap it up for now, and I will see you all later. Goodbye, everyone!